Welcome back, and we resume with some breaking news this hour. Police in Wales are currently dealing with a stabbing incident in the south of the country, and there have been reports of casualties. People have been warned to stay away from the area. We'll bring you more news on this as we have it. Now, according to a new poll, support for Welsh independence has risen drastically. A poll conducted by Savanta Comres revealed that just under 40% of people would vote in favour of independence. That's as more than half believe they have different social attitudes to the rest of the home nations. Whereas 36% of people said they have more faith in the Welsh Parliament over politicians in Westminster. Well, for more on this, I'm now joined by journalist and commentator Marcus Stead. Marcus, thank you for joining us. Support for Welsh independence is actually at an all-time high, so is it coming?
Well, good afternoon, Kate. The poll you just gave is very interesting, but at the moment, different polls are telling us very different things. It was only last weekend that a BBC ICM poll told us that 14% of people were in favour of Welsh independence, while 15% of people were in favour of abolishing the Senedd and reversing devolution in effect. So different polls are telling us different things. But perhaps the most important aspect of this, Kate, is that even if we choose to believe the poll you've just quoted, it in no way translates to support for Welsh Nationalist Party Plaid Cymru. That they're showing that they're still third in the polls behind Labour and the Conservatives. They're struggling to break through beyond their rural heartlands in West and North West Wales. That much is clear.
So then, do these polls then reflect that the Welsh people are actually more disillusioned by Westminster's response, particularly to the pandemic, than they are for a nationalist party?
It seems that way, Kate. I mean, during the course of the last year, we've seen supporting growth for the Yes Cymru campaign group, and they're claiming they've got more than 17,000 members at the moment, and they've got an army of a few hundred very aggressive cybernats on social media. We also see this sticker campaign where they're putting Yes Cymru stickers on lampposts and on road signs, but that's not really a very effective way of getting your message across, and in fact it irritates a lot of people. But when we get down to it, Kate, there are fundamental questions that these campaign groups and indeed Plaid Cymru are not offering answers to. How would a hard border with England work? What currency would we use? What would Wales do about its share of the national debt? Most Welsh nationalists seem to be pro-EU. Would Wales meet, an independent Wales meet the membership criteria for EU membership? Almost certainly not. And even if it did, the process of applying for EU membership and actually joining the EU takes about 10 years. How would an independent Wales survive in the meantime, bearing in mind the majority of our exports go to England, or at least via England? These are very complicated questions and ones they are not offering answers to.
Well, I was going to ask you that, the economic question. Could an independent Wales survive or thrive economically without the benefit of the Barnett formula and Westminster's financial input?
Well, the Office of National Statistics figures for July 2019 show that for each individual in Wales, there's a £4,376 subsidy from the English taxpayer. It's not just a question of survival. I mean, survival is one thing. Are we going to thrive and are we going to prosper in an independent Wales? And the evidence seems to suggest, no, we won't. Now, even from First Minister Mark Drakeford, he said yesterday that the union as we know it is finished. And there are fundamental questions about the constitutional arrangements in all parts of the United Kingdom at the moment. And Mark Drakeford called last week for home rule. Now, what Mark Drakeford is effectively calling for there is for the English taxpayer to continue to subsidise Wales and yet have less and less say in how Wales is governed. And you have to wonder, Kate, how long the English taxpayer will put up with that. For example, taxpayers in like Northern England, the poorer parts of Northern England, will think, oh, hang on, why are we giving so much of our taxes to Wales when we're not being offered any say in how Wales is governed? And we've got to look at this from both sides of the border, Kate.
Indeed. Has the pandemic shown in Welsh eyes that the Welsh Government can make its own calls?
Well, the pandemic has been a game changer in many ways because, look, turnout at all Assembly and what we now call the Welsh Parliament elections has been well below 50% since its inception in 1999. In fact, 1999 was the high watermark in terms of turnout. I am expecting turnout in this year's elections due in May to be considerably higher than they have been in the past because awareness of devolution has increased. There have been various surveys in the last few years about how a significant number of the Welsh population still believe that things like healthcare and education were decided by Westminster, when in fact they haven't been decided by Westminster since 1999. So I think what the last year has brought, Kate, with Mark Drakeford and Vaughan Gething, the Health Minister for Wales, leading the pandemic response is, for better or worse, at least people are now aware of where power lies in Wales.
Indeed. And finally, Marcus, very briefly, if you don't mind, what do you think the future is for Wales in the medium and long term?
Well, I think we are approaching potentially a crisis point because in terms of this year's Assembly elections or Welsh Parliament elections, First Minister Mark Drakeford is likely to fall well below the 30 seats required to govern. And it may well be that, look, Adam Price was elected Plaid Cymru leader in September 2018 with a mandate of not going into coalition with Labour or the Conservatives. It may well be that Mark Drakeford struggles to find other coalition partners, and we could be heading for a crisis.
Indeed, fascinating stuff. Marcus Stead, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, a judge has ruled that equality laws can protect those who hold English nationalism.